Hello, I'm Jason Bittner, and welcome to our Helix Insider podcast. I'm joined in studio today with three of my team, senior developers Sam Sheldon, senior developer Andy Webster, and our senior systems engineer Sean Coover. Hello, everybody. Today, we want to talk about custom software development and how it can benefit you and improve your company's productivity by considering a custom application. Here at Triple Helix, we make custom software applications for our clients all the time as a result of not finding the right size, right fit. And sometimes having something custom made is actually a huge improvement to a company's workflow and productivity. So, wanted to start with you, Andy, where when we do a project like this, how do you prepare for a custom project?
Well, usually we start with a spec. So, we would have some specification of what the project is supposed to be. And really, the more detailed that is, the better for the project, because the more we know the more we know what you need and the very small details, and you'd be surprised how how detailed things get. The more detail you can provide, the better um, in upfront. Because if we provide a vague detail in the beginning and then kind of um, pin down things later going on, it usually means doing things over. So when we have like a really clear picture of this is what we need to do right off the bat, and this is kind of a guideline of how we're going to accomplish it, that makes for the best trail to victory. Yeah. Um,
Yep, yep, makes sense. Sam, how about yourself? How do you prepare for these projects?
Yeah, so like Andy said, starting with the spec is important. One thing that I always try to get a sense of from the customer is what their process is currently. Because I know that a lot of the time when we get, requests for custom software, we'll go to a customer and they'll say, yeah, we don't like our current process and we're going to revamp it, and this is going to be the first step of that. And that never seems to turn out quite like they want it to. I assume because it's too much change all at once. You've got a bunch of people used to doing things a certain way, whether that's with Excel spreadsheets or on paper or whatever else their process might be, whiteboards, things like that. Um, what I've found is it's important to look at what the process that they have currently is and try to match that as closely as possible while also getting a sense of where they'd like to go, because that means we can build something that's flexible enough that if their process changes to something more streamlined or to include more features that we can give them, that it's a smooth transition rather than, as Andy mentioned, having to rework things. Because reworks cost a lot of time and energy, and there's always some little thing that goes wrong and gets forgotten.
That's a good point. Um, you touched on a very excellent point where, we are relied upon by our customers to create a specification that fits their need. And very rarely is the customer writing that specification for us. But on a rare occasion, a customer will actually be able to do so. And Andy, tell me about a time where we had one of our customers who really knew what the process of this was and how they handled giving us their spec.
yeah, I there's a specific customer that I'm thinking of that uh, is always very, very detailed in their specs, and I really appreciate that. It makes things a lot easier because it takes the guesswork out of um, you read. Um, I can't even think of a phrase right now, but you read a phrase in the specification and it seems kind of vague and you have questions about it. But in this case, you just read it and it says, "This will do this." You know, this will not let you save unless this form is filled out or whatnot, and then they have all the specifications just lined up for you. It actually makes a really big difference because that means less time back and forth um, trying to hammer out all the details. So because the more that the more work you put into it as the customer, um, initially, the better the result's really going to be, because we're going to have a better idea exactly what you want. And you can still fudge things around a little bit after that, because sometimes you don't really know what you want until you actually get the paint on the canvas. But yeah, it's that particular customer always provides just really, really detailed specifications, and I feel like that is part of why their product turned out so good.
Yep, and that's fair. I mean, like the best customers of ours that can provide very succinct details of what it is they want, usually get a much better product at the end of the day. So we talked about now getting ready for a project. Now let's talk about diving in. Sam, talk to us about what it's like now that you have your specification in hand. What's it look like when we actually formally dive into the application and start creating the code?
Yeah. So usually our first step is we have, our standard template for starting a project. We've got tools that we use, frameworks we install, things like that. We get that, basic layer laid down. And then we usually start with a big general feature, and then we drill in on that feature and work through that, and usually until it's done, and then repeat with the next feature and the next, and test as we go, things like that. Sometimes there are some projects that are a lot more interconnected, where we have to do a whole bunch of different parts of it all at once. Those tend to be the ones that are really complicated, like full applications, rather than the ones that are just, we need an extra reporting layer on top of our existing ERP. Yeah, it kind of depends on the project how we get started, because reporting layers on top of ERPs are very different than an entire, you know, application that's meant to support your process from start to finish.
Right, good point. And I know a big part of our diving in and getting started is related to not only the software itself, but the environment that it runs in. And I know you, Sean, are a big part of our team in making sure these environments are stood up correctly and actually configured correctly. Tell us an example, Sean, about what project you worked on where having all that in play made a huge impact for the customer.
Well, we have a customer, a manufacturing customer who has a lot of sensors in their manufacturing plant, and we designed and developed a platform to take all the data from those sensors and aggregate all that data and combine them into one database.
This is OEE, or Operational Equipment Effectiveness, or also referred to as IoT, Internet of Things. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, correct. LT. Correct. But we also had to design and develop a platform for a server to aggregate all of that data and provide that to the custom application that we built for the customer as well. The architecture and the platform that the application is built on, and the container and the server that it's on is a big, very important in my opinion. What is
Yeah, that one was very, very impressive because, I mean, there are a lot of software platforms off the shelf that you can purchase that will do this for you, but they are extremely expensive, both from a setup and a maintenance standpoint. And this particular customer was looking to not use one of those custom, or rather off-the-shelf systems. And because we had already developed a fairly robust reporting platform for them, they wanted to hook in. And I remember your input with this. We were basically taking the sensor feeds off of the floor with specific hardware, and then wrote the architecture to allow us to contain that, and then of course reconnect it to the application stack, because there was multiple touch points, not just the sensor hardware, but other reporting and whatnot we did. That was a very impressive project.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun with that. It was a good challenge, getting all of the sensors all aggregating into the through the wireless gateways, and getting it all aggregated into the server. We've got a big database that's rolling for it, and the reporting portal that we built for them is pulling data from that database.
this is a very good example of where a custom software application was really what this customer needed. The off-the-shelf hardware, software stacks were going to be very cost prohibitive for them, and quite frankly, may not have even worked exactly what they wanted. So yeah, that was a really good job, Sean. Now, I want to take a pivot here and talk about, we've talked about how we set up for a project and get things ready, the specification and the server environment. We talked a little bit about diving in and actually doing the work itself. But now I'd like to talk a little bit about how we actually wrap up. So when a custom software application is deployed, what does it mean to have that application continue to function properly and get support as the customer takes ownership of it? And Andy, I'll turn back to you on this one. Is what do we do when we wrap up and do a final delivery?
Yeah, so typically what we do is we'll set a date for the release, and we'll get all our script prepared, all of our stuff. If there's any data to migrate over, we'll have that all ready to go. And usually the client will specify a time of day that they want it to happen at. Everybody will get out of whatever applications that we're migrating data from, any kind of stuff like that, and then we'll launch the application. And typically, right before that launch, we'll have like acceptance testing. So we'll have like a beta test. So all that's where like a larger group of people will come into the software and like behave as if they were doing their regular business activities that they would expect the thing to do. And if that passes, then we will release the software, and we'll be kind of on standby on release to if anything acts unexpectedly, if you get any bugs, things like that. Usually, as like any software release anywhere, this always happens. You always have something that there's always something that nobody thought about. It's usually not that big, but and then we'll jump in there and fix those things up really quickly, and then as time goes on, those things will be less and less, and it'll be more like maintenance in the sense of if any kind of thing is not behaving the way it's supposed to, they'll open a ticket with us and we'll fix it. Or if they want to extend it, then we'll open a ticket and add something new. But yeah, that's pretty much the process that we go through releasing.
Sam, you've been involved in quite a few wrap-ups, and I'd like you to tell me about a time where the production launch and basically handoff to the client didn't quite go as expected, and what we had to do to remediate that and get them on the right track.
Yeah. So I think maybe some time ago we had a project that, after a lot of development, finally launched into production. We'd done a bunch of testing with the users. It was, we were all pretty confident this is going to work. So we get it launched, and then they start doing their financial reporting through our software, and they realize something's not adding up quite right. So they call us, obviously in a panic, something's wrong. And so we had to go through and figure out where the problem originated from, what specific part of the financial reporting wasn't working correctly. And it actually ended up being a case of they had requested a specific thing, planning to update their processes after we had gone live. But of course, over the course of development, plans change, and this was forgotten about. So we had to go through and rework some things within that reporting to ensure that their old methods still worked. And I believe eventually they did update things to the way they had planned, but it was still very awkward and required a lot of very quick bug fixing at the very end of that project.
I recall it I recall it a specific way where like they had after a year of testing not actually caught this particular feature bug inconsistency, and it was one of those hair on fire moments when you launch. And this is a very large lift for this company, so they had quite a few people doing the UAT for the live production launch to make sure everything was working right. And then that moment where they were like, oh no, we realized we didn't tell you you were supposed to use this set of instructions. And then it was like you had, within the context of a few hours, hair on fire fixing everything. That was a great and Herculean lift, I remember.
Yeah, it was definitely hectic. And it's fully possible that to miss things in testing because there's functions of your business that you don't think about outside of tax season or outside of, when you do a specific type of audit or whatever. There's a lot of little things that you don't think about when you're just looking at your day-to-day processes. And of course, and if it's not something you think about very often, when you're doing your user acceptance testing, you may not even think to go test it because it's not something you think about every day. Unless you're doing the user acceptance testing during that one specific time.
Right. So our senior systems engineer, Sean Coover, we also like to refer to him as our battle sergeant because he just takes care of all of the problems on the servers. And Sean, love to hear from you. Give us an example where did a launch and the lift has been made, and then all of a sudden something's horribly gone wrong, and what we did to remediate it, especially on your end on the server side. Because if something bad's going to happen, it's going to happen on the server and the configurations, right?
Right, right. Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I'm trying to think about a client where the deployment with the configuration went all wrong. I can think about one customer who was using I guess they were migrating their website to a new platform, and it required two different servers. And originally we had only spun up one server with one platform, but after that we realized that we needed a separate server for another service, and we had to quickly spin that up and get that up and running for them.
How much time did that take us?
We deployed the website, the online shop, and within, I would say, 2 to 4 hours, we had the second server all spun up and ready to go. It was a hair on fire moment.
Yeah, and this is speaking to what happens when you do your launch. All best plans intended, but they don't necessarily go the way you want. And I like your example because I remember that particular client, having the redundant solution able to be spun up that quickly against their production environment. This wasn't like us putting it back into development and shutting everything off. It was like they were live and they needed this other service stood up. So that kind of speaks to like your ability of spooling up these servers quickly in the pipeline and the tools that you've created to do so. Yeah, no, that was very impressive. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, I really enjoyed developing and designing the server platform that we're using right now at Triple Helix. It's really fine tuned for the applications that we develop for our clients, and they're really customized. We have a base image, but each application, as custom as they get, the image itself is going to get that custom too. So we have a base image and some great architecture, and we can just dive down from there.
Right. So that speaks to the idea of custom software development as a whole. Like a lot of people think custom software development is costly and very labor intensive. And what we here at Triple Helix have done is we've tried to take that labor intensiveness and costs out of the equation by standardized application stacks, standardized servers, standardized processes. In fact, right from the beginning, as we started this podcast, the specification is key. If you don't know what you're going to build or how you're going to build it, it's going to actually create a problem for you, not just the client, but actually for us as well, the development team. So, well, I think that's almost all the time we have for us today for the Helix Insider podcast. But just before we wrap up, I'd like to get some closing thoughts from everybody. Andy, closing thoughts?
Yeah, be specific as possible, I would say, and clear and constant communication is the best way to get the best product in the end.
Yep. Agreed. Sam, closing thoughts?
Yeah, so Andy's correct that being clear and consistent is a good way to get what you're after. I'll add that that when you're developing a custom software solution, that's maybe not the time to be aspirational about changing everything at once. It's hard to change everything at once. Start with what you know, have us develop something that fits with what you know, and let us know where you're going so that we can plan to eventually get there.
Good point. Good point. Sean, final thoughts?
Yeah, speaking on what Andy and Sam spoke on first, having a specification is amazing. If you know what you want, then we can definitely design and develop the not only the code but the architecture that supports the code in detail that's going to really support it all. And then having clear and consistent communication for what you need going forward, and making these changes in phases instead of having it all change at once, so that you can step into all the changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd like to invite our listeners, if anyone is currently experiencing a roadblock or has an idea for an application that would help their company, would really love to chat with you. Please put your feedback in the comments below, or also please feel free to reach out to us. We're on the web at www.3xcorp.com. That's number 3, X like X-ray, corp, like corporation.com. Also 860-490-3488. Would love to hear from you. This is Jason Bittner from our Helix Insider podcast, and I wanted to say thank you to my guests, Sam Sheldon, Andy Webster, and Sean Coover, for their great insights on custom software development. Until next time, thanks, everybody.